Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I thought we would go over a dev Q&A, but this time it's from Enlisted. And the reason for this is because I've done the first two playtests, or the first open alpha tests of Enlisted. I've been pretty impressed with it. If you want to see my opinions of it, I've done a few videos on my thoughts on the playtests and also some gameplay of it. And over the last week or so, obviously with the D-Day anniversary, there has been a few articles that have come out of Enlisted. The first one being the Invasion of Normandy campaign, which came out on the 6th of June 2020, which of course, is talking about the 6th of June Operation Overlord invasion of France, or the overall operation being known as Operation Neptune. And the main thing of this is, just basically going through how this campaign is going to work, giving some general ideas and also a general map of what the invasion mode is going to look like, which is very, very interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to it. There was also another article earlier on talking about the AI and how it's being improved over time, basically giving it better reaction time, also giving it a better aggro meter. And one of the things that is different in Enlisted compared to War Thunder is the fact that the devs are going a lot more in depth and trying to explain how they're making this stuff. Now, this might be because this game is, only been in development for a few years, where War Thunder has been in development for a very long time, but I'm just really, really interested in, the finite details of how they create systems in their game, and I think articles like this are just really, really cool to see, basically, how they're actually doing it. So yeah, I just thought I'd point those two out, but let's get into the dev Q&A, and since they've talked about Operation Overlord here, or the Invasion of Normandy, I should say, my guess is that we're probably going to get another playtest this weekend for this campaign, but obviously we don't know. That's a guess. But let's get into the question. So the first question is, will the game be distributed via Steam or other distribution platforms? And the answer is, currently we plan to distribute the game via the Gaijin launcher, but it is too early to announce any agreements with other platforms. So at least it will be available through the Gaijin launcher, which is good. Generally that's the most stable platform when it comes to all things said and done. And also, it has to be said, Anton Yudintsev came out in an interview earlier this year talking about the fact that he was personally not happy with the fact that on Steam you don't get access to a lot of functions, a lot of ideas, which basically mean that Gaijin can't track their stats as well from a marketing point of view. And so, they talked about the idea of an Epic exclusive game, but also he threw doubt on that, saying that exclusivity doesn't really work for the free-to-play model, and also really hasn't been tested for the free-to-play model either. Now, whether that's going to change going forward, whether, this game becomes an exclusive product, hopefully it doesn't become an exclusive product, because I want it to be in the hands of as many people as possible. Being a free-to-play means that the higher the population for it, the better, and I don't think exclusivity is the way to go. The fact that it's not on Steam at the start, though, isn't really a big deal, and also, they say it's too early to announce agreements. Cuisine Royale is on Steam, and I know Anton Yudintsev has talked about the fact that they aren't happy with some of the issues with Steam when it comes to visibility, when it comes to tracking data, but at the same time, if that was the case, and they weren't happy enough with this, then they wouldn't have put Cuisine Royale on Steam. Do you see what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, well, why did you decide to put this on as a free-to-play title if you weren't happy with it? So yeah, I think at the end of the day, we will see Enlisted on multiple platforms. The only question is, will there be any exclusivity deals? And hopefully not, because that could definitely kill the game very quickly, even though it is a short-term influx of cash, which would obviously be pretty good for the devs. So let's see. The next question is, any plans to release Enlisted on consoles? And the answer is, we're already planning a console release for Enlisted. Currently, the game is well optimized for the new generation of consoles, and we are constantly working on performance improvements. So there you go. It's going to be available for consoles, which is great. You know, it's obviously a larger market, and also at the same time, shooters in general, when I think about it, seem to do very well on consoles. You know, you think of Call of Duty, you think of other stuff like Battlefield. Generally, they are very much well received on console, and since this is more of an arcadey World War II FPS at the moment, I definitely think it would be received incredibly well, and it would work really well with controller. The controls are much more simplified than, let's say, a game like War Thunder. There's a lot less going on with the controls, and also, you know, as long as you get the balance with the aim assist right, and also with the cross-platform play that War Thunder has just announced, then all communities will be able to play together, and that will be awesome. Even though there are inherent issues when it comes to, you know, dealing with consoles and PC, and the inherent, you know, if you make the aim assist too good, it's kind of annoying to play against on PC, and if you make it too bad, then PC players annihilate consoles, but that is something that the devs will have to deal with. The fact is, it is coming to consoles, and that is a good sign. The next question is, I'd like to play with my friends in one session without using 123 join. Will you implement something to the upcoming game tests? And the answer is, we're already testing this functionality on internal tests, and it will definitely be in the next tests for players. At the moment, we are thinking about additional advantages and opportunities that such a battle group can provide. So basically, they're adding a squadding up function. You know, obviously War Thunder, you can squad up to 4 players. The thing about Enlisted is, let's say you squad up with like 4 players, but then your infantry squadrons themselves have 7 people in it, obviously 1 main player and 6 AIs. That's squadding up with 28 units, not just 4. So you kind of have to look at it like that. They do say that it will have the squadding up function though, so that's good. I'll be looking forward to playing that. One of the things that I was kind of annoyed with on the second test is I wanted to play with a few people, try and get a feel of what some kind of, not really competitive, but just kind of structured play would feel like, but unfortunately we won't be able to. The other thing we can also glean from this is there's going to be more than one more internal test, so it looks like they're going to be doing a bunch more tests when it comes to, you know, going forward, which is next tests for players, so it's plural there, so we're not just going to have a one and done. They did say that they do want to release the game by the end of the year, by the end of 2020. Whether they release it in like a beta state, which I'm guessing they're going to, because that's what they do with all their games, so yeah, it'll probably be something similar like that, but you know, hopefully we get, as I said, a playtest this weekend, and the squad functionality would be nice. The next question is, 120 to 150 soldiers still the theoretical maximum for one session, or will there be some changes? I don't know why you would want more. 150 soldiers already on the maps that we had was plenty. There was action around every corner. I don't want to get bopped and bipped and bapped every time I spawn, thank you. Currently, we have successfully tested sessions of up to circa 140 soldiers in one battle. We completed many rounds of server optimizations to make this number possible with the current level of interaction of soldiers in the environment, the number of gaming events per time, and combat intensity. However, the number of soldiers is limited not only by the capabilities of our servers, but also by the capabilities of player hardware, and we're still working on further optimization of both the client side and the server side. It is also worth noting that the more fighters per area, the greater combat intensity is in the given area, and it is reasonable for players to give more room to maneuver so that the battle does not turn into chaos and a meaningless meat grinder. We will try to realize greater freedom in other gaming modes with other combat missions, so then we can better imagine the upper technical and gameplay limits for different modes. Yes, for me, I understand the first point, you know, obviously the server load and the hardware load, but the main issue for me is it just becoming a meat grinder. One of the things that has always put me off Battlefield, and I know a lot of people like, you know, Battlefield for this, but for me, the constant being alive and dying, alive and dying, alive and dying, it happens every few seconds for me, because to be honest, I'm not very good at the game. It's one of those problems where I end up up sitting in the scorecard screen, a lot longer than anything else. And a lot of people ask, well, why don't you get better at it? My eyes aren't good enough. I can't see what's going on, even on, very much preferred graphics. That's why I much prefer, FPSs, which are single player, because I have a little bit more time to work out what's going on. It's unfortunate, but my eyes just aren't very good anymore. They've definitely deteriorated over time, and hopefully they don't deteriorate as much. And when it comes to Enlisted, at least with how the battles are going on, and also with the colors that are going on, and generally the map design, people come down corridors a lot, so it's a lot easier to tell where people are. And then also, when it comes to the AI obviously kind of wanders about, and if you have like 6 or 7 or 5 people per squad, then that means that there are 4 AI, or 5 AI, or 6 AI that you can kind of pick on instead of just the main player, which for a person like me is much more interesting, and the fact that if you die with one of your AI, you can quick spawn into another one, or you can flip between them. It's just a really cool little idea, and it means that you can keep the flow of the battle going without having these massive amounts of, stuff everywhere, and also having to go back to the scoreboard screen every time. So for me, it's a much better system than what we've had previously, and at the same time, I completely agree with that second point. I don't want to make it a meat grinder. I think that would be really, really boring. It would just mean that SMGs are everywhere and you just rat-a-tat everything as you go along. I would much better to have a little bit of space. And also, if you think about it, if you add more and more squads, guess what that means? There's going to be more artillery. There's going to be more tanks. There's going to be more mortars. There's going to be more basically everything, and it's just going to be horrific. So yeah. Definitely not too fun, especially since one of the biggest issues on the second test that we did was, in my opinion, the layering of artillery and mortars and everything else. If they add in this squad mechanic that they're talking about, which I hope they do, and then they also increase the amount of soldiers that are about, you could easily layer a position with artillery and mortars for minutes at a time. Even like 5 minutes you would be able to do that, so that's a bit of a problem. We took part in gameplay tests of 2 very distant episodes of the war, different in time and different in fighters. We may become confused in how they will be used and also squad progression. Okay, I don't know why you would get confused by that, but that's okay. Enlisted is a project that combines well-known military campaigns from different countries and different episodes of World War II. Previously, there was a chance to test missions from the Battle of Moscow and the Battle of Berlin campaigns. Every campaign consists of many missions with different objectives and content, locations, weapons and equipment, vehicles, and of course, nations. We plan to separate squad progression in every campaign. If you have several campaigns, you may switch between them right in the game clients with a couple of mouse clicks. So it seems like they're not going to run individual campaigns by themselves. They're going to run campaigns all at the same time, or at least if once they're all added at the same time, my guess is you'll get a soft launch of Enlisted, which will maybe have 1 campaign or maybe have 2 campaigns, and over time they will add the other campaigns going forward. The only question is, will there be enough content to keep people interested until the next campaign comes out? But yeah, basically what they're saying here is all of the campaigns are separate from each other, right? So they all will have different things to them. They'll all have different objectives. They'll all have different progression. They'll all be completely separate. So therefore you don't have to worry about walking into a new campaign, like first day, fresh like a tomato, and just walking in and getting blasted by something from another campaign. Like you don't have to go to the Battle of Moscow and have to face an IS-2, because obviously there wasn't any IS-2s at the Battle of Moscow. So that's good. In which languages will Enlisted be localized? Always a good question. In the early stage, Enlisted will be available in the Russian and English languages. Good stuff. There are partial translations into German, French, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese, but they're not 100% supported in the current version of the game. New localizations are possible in the future. I mean, this is probably very similar to how War Thunder does it. So War Thunder has the main languages, and then over time they slowly add other languages. So so I won't be surprised if that's the case here. Generally, as long as you get the main languages, which it seems like they already have, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue. And obviously, depending on how much you can mod this game, well, not mod's the wrong word, but adapt the files, let's call it, because in War Thunder you can adapt them a lot, right? Like, you can change the names of pretty much anything, you can change all of the audio files, so the idea is, if you want to put in your own languages, you can in a game like War Thunder, whereas maybe Enlisted won't be the same, but we'll have to see. If it's as customizable, that's probably a better word, if they're as customizable as War Thunder, then it should be okay. So about the gameplay. Now, so this part was, let's see, just general Q&A, I'm guessing. It doesn't have a subtitle. So, will progress from one campaign transfer to another? So this is what I was talking about before. So content associated with one campaign, i.e. squads and equipment, will be tied to that campaign. Good. That is a good move. It is logical that an IS-2 from the Battle of Berlin campaign could not take part in the Battle of Moscow. Very true. Same with like a Panther or like a Tiger 2 or something. Game currency, Battle Pass, and Battle Coupons will be common for all campaigns. So they're basically making the currency across the board in the game available everywhere. Battle Pass is interesting. So we've talked about the fact that we don't really know anything about the monetization model of Enlisted. We know for a fact that it was crowdfunded at the start. We know for a fact that they wanted to do a pay-by-campaign a pay-by-campaign idea when they first started. Then there was a community backlash. Not really a backlash, but more of just a fact-finding mission, and people expressed that they wanted it to be free-to-play. Therefore, the model became free-to-play, so all the campaigns will be available to everyone. And then it was kind of like, okay, so if you're going to do that, I mean, that's pretty cool. More access to more players, more people will be able to play. How are you going to fund the damn thing? Where's the money going to come from? And a lot of free-to-plays over the last year or so, they've gone down the Battle Pass route. They've decided that a Battle Pass is the way to go, so therefore, you can pay for the Battle Pass, or you can not pay for the Battle Pass, and you can either ground it out normally by just generally playing the game, very much like a lot of research systems in games like War Thunder, or you can buy, the Battle Pass to get a few levels ahead, in order to, be able to get all of the other content. So if you look at, like, Cuisine Royale, which I'll actually bring up on the screen, Cuisine Royale, which is another Gaijin product, which was actually it started off as an April Fool's event from what the basis of Enlisted was. If you have a look here, if this does use the Battle Royale method, you have the Heaven's Wrath, which is like a new idea. But if you have a look at a lot of their other stuff, such as their About section and things like that, they have the game feature, they have a beautiful FAQ talking about everything, but most stuff is all about the general ideas when it comes to the game, and also adding, look at that, a bunch of different vehicles now. I mean, Cuisine Royale is really, adding up to be quite an interesting game, and it's actually gaining a lot in popularity, which is definitely something to definitely something to talk about. But they do a Battle Pass system, like a lot of these Battle Royale games, and it's generally seen as, I think, pretty good, if I'm honest with you. A lot of people seem very happy with it. Then you have, quite a lot of just updates to it overall. If you want to go and follow Enlisted, I would definitely Enlisted and Cuisine Royale. I think following Cuisine Royale and looking at how that's being developed and the different mechanics that are being put into this, I definitely think it's something to look at for the future developments of Enlisted, since they're both basically being developed alongside each other. So yeah, this is the basic system that this uses. So when it comes to Enlisted, I'm pretty much sure that's what what this is going to use as well. You're going to have in-game currency, which will be your normal currency. Then you'll probably have a premium currency, kind of like GE and War Thunder, that'll be able to be used to purchase, certain things quicker than people grinding it out. Then you'll have a battle pass system, which will mainly be for cosmetics or mainly be for stuff to add to your soldiers and things. And then on top of that, you'll have these battle coupons, which I'm guessing will be stuff like percentage discounts, or there'll be, stuff like maybe a day of premium or something like that. Very similar to a lot of other free-to-play games. I don't think there will be any mold breaking when it comes to the monetization model of Enlisted. I think it will just be very similar to what we've seen before in many different areas. The next question is, what is the maximum location size we can expect from Enlisted? We saw the Battle of Moscow and the Battle of Berlin, the size of which corresponded to modern FPS games. But some players would like to participate in battles where it takes several minutes to get to the enemy using vehicles. Who? Who wants this? Who wants this? Do you really, really want to just drive around for several minutes? Is this the same little bit of community who wants like Naval EC? Or who wants ground forces EC in War Thunder? Is this like the 2 to maybe 5% of players who may consider playing these things? Imagine if you don't have a vehicle and you have to walk. Imagine if you die. Yes, you have your squad. What if your squad dies? Oh, well, I guess you're driving for several minutes again. Who wants to do this? Sorry, let's get to the answer. Depending on the campaign, the location size can reach several square kilometers. Game designers use separate map areas to create thematic missions. Yep, definitely. We have seen that over the last 2 things where they've taken like little parts of each one and moved them. Like they have like a large map and then they square it off into certain sections to create other maps, which I think is fine. The scale of the areas different types for different types of troops may vary. For example, in one mission, soldiers might throw the enemy 500 meters back. Vehicles are provided with an additional corridor of several hundred meters, and aviation has an area of several kilometers above the battlefield. Thus, we implement a different scale of the battle within one session. Good stuff. Just say no on the driving for several minutes. Just say that's a dumb idea. You don't want to do this. And if you want to do this, there are games out there which you can try that in, and they have much smaller player bases than games which don't. Currently, we are testing different scales of a battle to reach a suitable balance between distances and combat intensity. It is worth noting that we are currently honing the most popular and accessible game modes for beginners, Domination and Assault, but we are planning other game modes designed for a more niche audience. I love it. I love how they write that, because it's already, the way that they've written that is to basically say, this is very much a minority opinion, and we will try and cater for you, but also understand the majority of people don't want to play this. So yeah, that's good PR speak, but at the same time, it gets the point across. What vehicles, except tanks and aircraft, are planned for the game? Will we see armored vehicles as well as non-military equipment such as trucks? So Cuisine Royale does have a bunch of these non-military vehicles. Well, they're not even really non-military vehicles. They are military vehicles, but you do have other stuff like buses and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of everything. You'll definitely see and be able to control a large number of armored vehicles and light combat vehicles in the game. The use of special equipment will depend on the game modes, and during the development of the project and the mission mechanic, we can add more interesting vehicles. Not only tracked, but also wheeled vehicles and aircraft, of course. So yeah, now we've seen the tanks in the most recent tests. I think tanks so far have worked okay. I think they need to do a little bit more damage tank on tank. It felt like everyone was firing APCR. And at the same time, even rocket launchers to tanks didn't really do very well. I think there has to be some kind of fatigue mechanic as well put in, so you can't just have one guy moving around positions in a tank, kind of like the old school War Thunder, when they added in crew replenishment. I shouldn't really say old school, it was only a few years ago, but the crew replenishment, where if you just had one member and then you could just keep shooting the tank in War Thunder and it just wouldn't die because you couldn't hit that one crew member, that's something I've seen a lot happen in Enlisted, and it's kind of annoying to deal with, especially if you don't increase the amount of damage guns such as tanks or rocket launchers do to vehicles. So that is something to think about. The other thing as well is adding wheeled vehicles I think is fine. Adding planes I think is a bad idea. Depending on how they're controlled, they're either going to be useless or incredibly useful. So let's say you have them in first person, right? So keep it very similar to how the tanks are, because the reason why the tanks work in Enlisted is because you have a very limited field of view, because you're either in the gunner's spot most of the time or you're in the commander's spot. And if you're in the commander's spot, you have to poke your head out of the top of the turret and to see around. This means that you can get killed. So therefore, if you get killed, you lose that commander's spot, and you lose a crew member, and at the same time, you lose your vision until you try and replace them with maybe a loader or something. And if you do that, then, you don't load as fast. It's a very nice mechanic. It's basically a risk-reward mechanic. Then you have the gunner's FOV, where you are very limited on how you see. So it's basically a first-person view of what's going on. And in order to balance vehicles in a game like Enlisted, and you have to do this. If you gave them third-person view, then it would just be so easy for vehicles to annihilate anything around them. And that's what we see from a lot of games. If they do, the third-person view, vehicles take over. So when it comes to planes, if they decide to do planes in a third-person point of view, I can see them taking over battlefields. And it's not going to be fun, just like it isn't fun to get mowed down by artillery, to get mowed down by mortars, stuff that you can't do anything against, and then after that, spawning back in with your third squad and getting mowed down by a plane. So unless they put it in first person view for the plane, which I think they could definitely do, then I think we're going to have real issues when it comes to aviation. Aviation is not really a balanced thing, especially since you would need specific counters on the ground to deal with it. And we don't have any anti-air squads, we don't have any quad 20mm hanging about, and I tell you, if you do add quad 20mm, guess what? They'll be used on infantry as well, and then you got another balancing problem. Do you see, we're gonna have to see. We really are. But I very much disagree with the addition of aircraft in this game. I don't think it needs them. I think keep it to ground. If you want to add aircraft, maybe just have some thematic stuff like sounds, especially if you're talking about Normandy. Maybe have some P-47s overhead that just fly about. Maybe, some bombers or something. But don't make them, or don't let them do anything to the battlefield. By adding them into the battlefield, it's going to create issues if it's done wrong. And if it's done right, then they're going to be kind of useless. It's a feast or famine scenario for me. It's the only part of Enlisted that I'm really worried about, apart from the layering of stuff, as I've said, such as artillery or such as, mortars. Do you plan on implementing aviation as a classic squad equipment, or shall we expect AI-controlled aviation as a game event, for example, call a bomber raid? And the answer is, at the moment, we don't plan such mechanics, as we are working on player-driven gameplay, such as pilot strike and bomber aircraft. So, that's good. But they do say bomber aircraft there. There are a lot of bombers which have ridiculous payloads, so hopefully they have. I'm sure they're thinking about this, but at the same time, I really struggle with the idea of aircraft and how it's going to fit in this. Maybe I'm wrong, but that just sounds like the worry to me. The next question is, AI squads are a very remarkable feature in the game. We have seen how you improved their behavior in the second test, but we would like to know more about your future plans for the importance of gameplay. What will the AI learn in the future? What would you like to teach it? And will we have a wider choice of teams? So the answer is, we're planning to help you. We plan on telling you about our work on the AI in separate dev blogs. We have already redesigned the target selection mechanics and continue to work on many interesting and necessary in-battle mechanics. One of these mechanics will entail a more developed and detailed control of the squad, with the ability to appoint your soldiers with a preset behavior. Good stuff! Hell yeah! That sounds awesome. The choice of contextual commands will also be increased. For example, it will be possible not only to attack an enemy vehicle, but also to give an order to storm fortified positions. Wonderful stuff. More control of the AI is always positive. That is awesome. Also, we consider the ability to choose hideouts and better use of the surrounding space an important part of AI behavior. We have taught your soldiers how to choose targets for attack, but the movement of the positional battle in most games immediately marks the player, which will be controlled from AI. They cannot handle and hide as intelligently as a real player. Yep, and they can't shuffle peek either. We have already written an algorithm for Enlisted at the stage of the local creation that looks for possible hideouts under the given parameters, where the AI can already choose the most suitable from these hideouts for the current battle situation. That is a long sentence. There are already thousands of hideouts and locations that can be used by AI soldiers. We plan to improve the algorithm so that they can use tens of thousands of hideouts. Wonderful stuff. That's awesome to hear. That is very much wonderful to hear that they are improving their AI. I still need to test high AI, like a tier 5 AI, because I definitely saw an improvement with the AI as we went up the ranks. So that will be something to look at. Generally, the AI, I think it will be impossible to get it to the level of a player, and I also don't want it to be at a level with a player, because then it would just be going around donking people and it wouldn't be a very fun experience. But I really like the fact, as I've said before, that they're doing stuff like this and showing, how they are making the AI. I wish there was more of this done, and it looks like we're going to get it, so that is really, really cool. The preset behavior thing also is something which is great. It's something that I've actually advocated in War Thunder for a while. If you ever wanted to create like a game mode or aerialistic where it isn't just you, it's you and 3 other fighters or something, like as basically a squadron. And the reason for it is because I used to play a game called Blazing Angels back in the day. Blazing Angels Squadrons of World War II. And that had a really, really nice, very simple mechanic where you could either set your squad to aggressive, you could set it to like supportive, so it would defend you personally, or you could set it to like a passive thing, so it wouldn't do anything. And I thought this was just a really simple way of doing it, and it seemed to work really well. You could also tell it to attack specific targets or defend specific targets, which seems to be what they're doing here as well. So once again, a very simple set of rules, which, the AI can follow, and also easy to control, which is the other part of it, right? Will you be able to install cannons and make fortifications? Such opportunities are planned. These works will require special soldiers in one squad who will be specialized for construction, so like an engineer. Okay. Okay. So if we already have assault missions, right? So you could easily set up fortifications, but it really depends on how long it takes you to set up fortifications. If it takes you like a minute or two, then it's going to be useless. But if it takes you, let's say, 20 seconds, then now we're talking. And if it's like a 50 cal nest or something like that, bloody hell. But yeah, it sounds really cool, and also it would be great in like a defense-offense game mode to be able to do that, like if you had a bit of prep time or something to be able to set stuff up. At the same time, you have already counters to this in the form of mortars or artillery, so yeah. I'm not sure how useful fortified positions are in a game which has such accurate mortars and accurate artillery, but we'll have to see. At the moment, wounds simply result in a decrease of a soldier's health level. Will it stay this way in the future, or will you develop an injury system? For example, up to a level where an injury of the limbs will affect movement, aiming, retention of the recoil, etc. The answer is we're not planning on implementing this at the moment, but it may change as project develops. Yeah, this is an arcade shooter. Fuck off back to Tarkov. Will we have bayonets on some guns? Yes, we are developing separate animations and mechanics for bayonets. So there you go. They're going to have shooty, stabby, which is always good. The next part to have a look at is regarding graphics. And regarding graphics, it looks like they are going to talk about certain things in it, which make it very not just realistic, but also, based around the ideas of gameplay. And the first question is, in shooter titles, players usually prefer a better view and a reduced graphics setting by removing some effects and simplifying, for example, vegetation settings. In pre-alpha tests, graphics didn't differ much in different settings. Yes, they did. Is this your conscious decision, or will the effect of the settings be changed? The answer, it is a conscious decision, and we plan to stick to it in the future. Deteriorating the graphics settings will only improve the performance, but will not give the player any significant advantages. Right, that is a lie. That is not how any of these systems work. Unless you are some kind of, I don't know, if you have cracked the code when it comes to how fog works in games and how general mist or how general ambience works in games, then fair enough. I'll eat my words. But at this time, on that second test, when I screwed around with the graphics settings, because something I noticed when I played like the first 2 games on that is, yes, it looked beautiful. It was very smoggy. There was smoke everywhere. It was very hazy. There was people walking around, and it looked like a perfect Battlefield. And I have a I have a 2070. I bumped up all the graphics, so I turned down everything to low. What a surprise! All of that stuff disappeared. I could see straight through it. And I was wondering in the first few games, it was like, oh, well, I'm getting killed on really weird angles here, like from places I just literally can't see. And then, guess what? After turning down everything, oh, I could see these areas. So this idea that it's not going to have any significant advantage, it's just like War Thunder and the ULQ thing again. ULQ may not give you as much of an advantage as it used to, but I tell you what, it does give you a very good advantage compared to somebody who's working on movie. It just is. Like, I know no game dev will say this, and I know no game dev will put this out there, but it is true. It does give you a decent advantage, even if you just turn off something like grass, right? Even just turning off grass gives you quite a large advantage in that regard. The destruction of small objects and fences look good, but are there any plans for larger buildings? So this answer is in 2 parts. I agree with the second part. The first part is ridiculous. There will be no destruction of larger buildings. Okay, that's good. Because, basically gameplay objectives, you don't want the buildings falling down, because then it will just become who can fire over the rubble the best. The explosive mass in tank shells are too small to consistently cause serious damage, even to small wooden houses. Nobody talked about tank shells in the question. You may notice a lot of historical photos where heavy aircraft bombs, rather than armored vehicles or explosives, cause the main destruction. That is true, even though aircraft bombs are incredibly inaccurate in World War II in a lot of cases. Only in the most difficult cases would crews spend their valuable shells to destroy defensive positions in a building, but even so, the building would not be destroyed. That's the very first reason. Right, let's talk about this. You have addressed tank shells. Why? I don't know. Tank shells has been for some reason you've decided tank shells is the way forward. In your game, you have aircraft, right? You have aircraft. You've already said you're having aircraft. You have already mentioned that you are going to have strike and bomber aircraft. right? So, accurate bombing is basically what we're talking about here, especially with strike aircraft. So the idea that you are first of all talking about tank shells, for some reason, I don't know why. The other thing as well is mortars and artillery, which once again are incredibly accurate in the game. And you can put several artillery barrages on the same place over and over and over again. And technically you could have like 5 or 6 or 7 aside, so therefore that could be 14 artillery strikes on this designated target. So yes, this is Grudinen's mill in Volgograd, and yes, it was under fire for 58 days. Was it under 14 consecutive artillery blasts? Was it getting constantly bombed by strike fighters and bomb fighters? Or was it, as we can see here, was it more about actual small caliber rifle fire and maybe some stuff such as certain, shells or certain stuff like that? I bet you if we look into Grudinen's mill, it will be that, instead of what I've just talked about. So, I don't know why they've decided that tank shells is the hill to die on here. What about everything else? And what about all the other stuff that I just mentioned? There's no real need for this paragraph. You're trying to justify it historically, and you don't need to. Just leave this one in. Just leave this one in. The second reason is due to game design. Just say the whole thing's to do with game design. This is an arcade military World War II. It's an arcade FPS which is using World War II as the backdrop. Right? And that's okay. That's good. The first playtests have gone really well. It's been a lot of fun. But you don't need to appeal to realism here. There's no reason to, You're not War Thunder. You're an arcade FPS where you switch between people, right? You can't do that in a realistic setting. The second reason is due to game design. Even by accurately recreating the government quarter of Berlin, we added intermediate capture zones, which are markers of your team's progress. The possibility of their complete destruction will literally destroy the balance by depriving the attacking side of the opportunity to gain a foothold on the position. You were able to see such situations during the second test when one of the points, which was reinforced with sandbags, could be completely destroyed and the attackers had to lie in the bare field while under fire from many positions. At the same time, we understand the important... No, shh. Don't, shh. You don't need to put this. At the same time, we understand the importance of positional battles, and therefore, for example, log houses can be penetrated with large caliber weapons and even machine guns. We'll continue to pay attention to such details in the future. Just don't bother with this. Right, this answer for this question, just put this. Just put that. It'll be fine. People will be fine with this. You don't need this. Like, this isn't needed, and this bit isn't needed either. So, yeah, I completely agree on the second test. The Battle for Berlin, that one assault mode map where it was the Soviets assaulting and the Germans defending, it was incredibly unbalanced. It was pretty much impossible to be able to win as the Soviets. I don't think I did win as the Soviets, and I won every time as the Germans. So basically what we saw now when it came to it is, first of all, the idea of capping 2 points simultaneously doesn't really work in a game mode with infinite respawns for the defender and finite respawns for the aggressor. The other thing is, yes, that situation where you could destroy the sandbags on the left-hand side of that one area, when it was destroyed, yeah, it was an open field. But what is hilarious is the point on the right-hand side was also an open field. So, yeah, it was basically just, can you go prone in an open field and hopefully not get shot or run over by a tank? The other thing is, the 2 points before it, one of the points was in a building, which was nice. The other point was once again in an open area. So you had no cover to defend yourselves. It was not good. It was bad map design. So hopefully that is changed before that campaign is released. But overall, a good Q&A. A lot of interesting stuff, a lot of interesting ideas put forward here. And I just want to say, after not really hearing anything about Enlisted in 2019, it is much more refreshing that we've had some open tests. We've had, a lot more of these articles talking about Enlisted and talking about how it's going to work and, looking forward with it as well. I'm much more happy with this. You can see that since April this year, we've had a bunch of tests, we've had a bunch of articles about it, and well, the hype is building, and I am very much looking forward to it when it comes out. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Battling Bacon, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Conte Baraka, Daniel Stanton, Elove Goat, Jay Wilt, Martinez, Trigger Hippie, Universe, Eugens Terry, and also I'm Devilish and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.